Hello and welcome everybody. Let me get some things set up here. Want to say hello to the chat. We now have the live chat. Thanks to Miss Shannon. Thank you. No one's even tuned in yet. Okay. I'm gonna wait till people. I got paint on my forehead already. Haven't even touched the paint. Hello. I'm not sure who the one person is, but welcome. We're just waiting for some other people to join us. I know I got some other people tuning in. Hope everyone is healthy, safe, relaxed, in the zone. If you want to make a comment, we can have a conversation in the chat this time. It's not just me talking at you anymore, which is nice. So if you have any questions, please go ahead. I'm going to wait for a few more people to join if anybody's joining. Hey, there's person number 2. Hello. I wonder if I could see a list of who all is involved here. Maybe not. Hey, we got 3 people. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We got 3 people going. Welcome. My name is Mr. Cody, as probably all of you know. And we're going to do some landscape painting today. So last Wednesday, I had my first live stream. And what we did was we stretched a brand new canvas right here. And we did some primer on that, some white gesso. Beautiful canvas. Nice and pure white, clean, ready for us to start a landscape painting. So what we're going to do first is we're going to do a little bit of underpainting and sketching with oil paint. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my process with that, how to block in some warmth and specific color underneath my painting to get myself started, but also a sense of light and shadow to develop a strong light source in my landscape. Then I have another landscape painting that I've hold on, sorry, I'm having some trouble with my cart. I started based on a photograph I took while in Cape Cod. So we're going to work on that. This is kind of like middle of the road. I've done my underpainting. I have some more ethereal atmospheric textures going on here. I'm going to start to lay in some bolder color and start to really map out the space and detail of this painting. Not too much detail at first, because obviously details build up with the layers you add with oil paint. But just to begin, we're going to lay out some of the foreground here, middle ground and background. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then, last but not least, I showed you a painting that I started of a view down in Westchester at a park called Stroud, I believe. I started this painting over this last summer, and I never got around to finishing it. So I thought it would be perfect to have one landscape painting that is just starting, a landscape painting that is kind of in the middle, and then one that is towards the end here, right? Obviously, you can see I have this pretty well developed, a sense of foreground, middle ground, background. I'm going to work on the details in my foreground here, especially this patch of trees here. It's pretty lackadaisical. You can see the sense of light and shadow, though, that I got going, and we're going to really push that and work on developing that. Anybody have any questions? Remember, now we have a chat, so if you do have any questions while I'm going along, or you're like, hey, Mr. Cody, slow down, please. You're going way too fast. You're talking a mile a minute, which I tend to do when I'm teaching and painting. So please feel free to ask questions. All right, so first off, what we're going to do here, I'm going to rearrange my cards here so we can get a little closer. Well, shoot. All right, let's move you in here. Can you all see that? Oh, that's nice. Okay. And then if I angle down, we're going to see my palette. Excellent. So again, this is my palette. This is where I mix all my paintings, all my paint. And I got some brushes, some mineral spirits, some linseed oil, which is a nice like medium thickness medium to mix into my paint to kind of smooth it out, and some smaller brushes here. So I just fully scraped down my palette from last time. Remember, oil paint takes a long time to dry. So this paint had actually just dried, so it was nice and easy to scrape up. And so what you use to do that is this paint scraper. It's basically a razor blade attached to like a little thing, a little clip so you can replace the blade, and you scrape the paint off. Now. What I like to do with my paint scraps is we don't throw it away. we want to recycle and conserve and reuse paint as much as possible. So even though it's kind of dry and creates this kind of weird skin, you can see some of it here, these kind of bubbles and like weird scraps of paint, right? What we're going to do is we're going to save all these scraps of paint in here, right? We're going to save a little bit more about my abstract painting process, which deals with a lot of really strange, weird, thick mediums. And I really like to use these scraps of paint. You can kind of see the oil paint forms these weird skin. My hands are about to get super messy. That's okay. Right? These like really gross piles of like, almost looks like leaves, and it's sticky and it's weird, but we're going to mix that with some wood finish and plaster and all sorts of fun things and work on building up a new abstract painting similar to, actually here I have some examples right here hanging up in my studio, similar to this guy, right? Using some Venetian plaster with some oil paint over top of it, but then also this painting here, which normally goes horizontal, but it is leaning up against my wall right now vertically to conserve some space. Okay. Anyway, let's jump right in here. Let's jump right in. So what we're going to do, we're starting from scratch. We're working on underpainting for a landscape. And the landscape I want to do is another one of my photos from Cape Cod where we took a hike in Cape Cod National Forest, Coastal National Forest. And yeah, you can see it. That's wonderful. So I had this really nice forest and we got a tree line in the background. And I really liked this photo. And a lot of times in my work, I like to play with silhouettes. And so I really liked the silhouette of these trees, which aren't fully silhouetted. You can see some of the tree bark texture and things like that. So that's actually going to be what we're going to focus on down the line in probably a few live streams from now. But we're going to focus on that underpainting and that background today. So the first thing I want to do, we're going to work from my background to my foreground. And so what's in my very background here is my sky. And so we're going to mix a blue. I'm not going to get too in depth with details of the clouds or the kind of like softer textures. I'm literally just trying to get my canvas wet with paint so that way I can work into it and really block out some colors, lay in some color. So I'm going to grab a blue and hold on one second. We got a few blues here. We got two blues that I'm going to use today for my sky. And we're also going to mix in, surprise, probably some red. Now I'll explain that in just a second. But first, we have some cerulean blue, right? I visited in autumn this past October up to Cape Cod. And that's, again, if you're just tuning in, that's what I'm painting is a picture of I took from Cape Cod. And in autumn, all the colors change, right? We got all these beautiful reds and oranges and yellows and warm greens and warm blues. And so I really want to use a nice warm blue. And I'm going to mix that cerulean blue with this darker cobalt blue to really make it a nice, rich, deep color. And then we're going to pull out some of that intensity, make it a little bit more atmospheric. So I'm going to lay out some of the paint here on my palette. Angle you down here at my palette. Beautiful. Let's move it over just a little bit. Okay. Put some cerulean blue. I'm going to put that cerulean blue right here. That's going to be my main color. So I'm going to go ahead and just give myself a whole bunch of right there in the middle of my palette. Here's my cobalt blue. I'm going to use some of this titanium buff. Now, we talked about that last time, but in case you are just tuning in for the first time, hold on, I got to find it. I don't know where it went. There it is. We've got white, and then we've also got titanium buff. You can see the difference. Now, this is really nice for mixing those pale grayish colors. Let us know if you have any questions for Cody. Oh, I think that's Miss Shannon saying. Thank you, Miss Shannon, for also typing in the comment section. We've got two different kinds of white, off-white, that we're going to mix to lighten up that color blue, because my blue isn't like super, super rich in color. It's nice and atmospheric and airy, and so I want to really lighten that up. So I'm going to put some white on my palette here because all my white over here is dry for the most part. Put some fresh white. This is also some really nice white paint, the Winsor Newton. Right, Winsor Newton, very good brand. Blick, Dick Blick Art Store down in Center City. They have some really nice oil paints too, but this is really cream of the crop. It's like melted butter. It's amazing. So we've got some titanium buff is already there. All right, so next I'm going to grab my palette knife. And we're going to use this one. All right. Grab my palette knife. I'm going to go ahead and just grab a big glob of titanium buff because I know I want to knock back this really bright blue here. And then I'm going to cut my blue, start to mix. Can you see? Oh, yeah, you can see that. That's great. So we're going to start to lighten up, and we're going to essentially, I don't want the blue of my sky to be quite this intense, right? I want to gradually start mixing in some colors to push it back while keeping that warmth of my color, but to give more of an airy atmospheric kind of feel to it. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some of that wonderful white I just squeezed out over here. I'm going to start to mix that in here so you can see it's starting to lighten up a little bit. Now, this blue is still really, really bright. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take, I said red earlier, but it looks like I got some orange. We got some nice bright orange now. We talked a little bit about this last time, right? When we were mixing shadows in my fan painting. Why would I ever mix orange into blue? That just sounds ridiculous, right? Well, orange and blue are complementary colors. And so when you mix them together, they actually negate each other. They don't negate each other. They desaturate each other is the word. So what's going to happen is it's going to create, oh, that's beautiful. This beautiful blue, gray, and because of the warmth of the yellow in that orange, it's actually going to bring out some of the green tones in my blue, which is really nice. Let's go ahead and add a little bit more white. And instead of orange, actually, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of red. Now, I really like this red that I'm about to add. It's called Venetian red. Beautiful, beautiful red. Nice, cool red. We're going to mix that right in, and that's just going to start to bring out some of the purple in my blue. And we're going to get this really nice blue-gray. Now, I think I've desaturated it a little bit too much at this point. Hopefully, you can see the difference between, yeah, you can. I can tell, right? I'll get down in here. This blue right here and this blue. I started with this cerulean blue, this nice bright blue. And by mixing orange, some red, and some titanium buff and white into that blue, I'm starting to really desaturate it, push it back into space, right? The brighter my colors, the more they move forward towards the foreground of my painting. And really, I'm focusing on the background right now, the sky. And so I don't want that color to overtake what is eventually going to be the layers and the elements of my landscape painting that are pushing forward. So that being said, I do want to brighten this up just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more cerulean blue. Oh, yeah, that's good. We're getting there. Notice how I'm going, when I'm mixing my paint, right? It's this kind of like melted butter consistency, which is really nice. I can use my palette knife to kind of push it back and forth, or even in circles if I wanted to, right? Scrape it up from the glass palette, really smooth it out to try and see, or try and really mix that color, those colors together evenly. That way I can be like, okay, that is my color, and I can hold it up. I can hold it up to my canvas. And so I don't know if you can see this, but with a really important aspect of mixing paint, right? A few things. Really good lighting, which I have natural lighting behind you coming through the windows. And I have these nice diffused white screened lighting here for photography. Another thing that's really important for mixing colors is always hold it up to your painting before you add it, before you add the color in. And the reason you want to do this is because while I'm mixing my paint here on my palette, it's a see-through pane of glass, and there's lots of other paint going on. My eye is interpreting and seeing this individual color much differently than it would if it's entirely surrounded by this bright white, right? So I'm looking here, and I'm realizing that this blue is actually a little too dark, and it looks like I need to actually make it cooler. It's a little too warm now that I'm actually holding it up to my painting, which is very surprising because when I'm looking at it here on my palette, When I'm looking at it here on my palette, it looks very warm and looks very light. So what I'm actually going to do is take some white here, big glob of white. We're going to mix that in. We're going to mix that in. All right, that's looking a little better. And to cool it down, I'm actually going to go ahead and mix some more of that cobalt blue. Hopefully this won't darken my color too much. No, we'll be all right. I need some more. So little by little, I tell my students this all the time, but when you're mixing colors, you really want to add just a little bit of paint at a time. I always tell my students, dime size globs of paint. So one, we don't waste paint, but two, so you don't overtake your color accidentally with another color and then have to start over and waste paint that way, right? Little by little, we want to build up this color of my sky. Now that's looking pretty good. I'm comparing it to my painting right now. We might want to add, while everything is wet, right, on my canvas, we'll probably add a little bit of cobalt blue towards the top. Because as my sky moves upward, if you've ever noticed, the sky actually gets darker or a little bit more saturated in color as it moves from your horizon line, right? Horizon line in a landscape is where the sky meets the ground. And so when we start there, you get all the atmosphere, all the light pollution and things like that, air pollution. And then as you move up towards the sky, directly above you, it's a deeper, richer color. So I now have my blue mixed here. I'm going to grab a brush. We'll do this guy. Just kind of flat brush, not too big, because I still want to be able to really work it and give it a little bit of brush stroke. So I'm going to grab some mineral spirits. And what I want to do to maintain the airiness and the lightness of my painting, I'm going to thin out my paint. One, in order to cover more ground than if I would if the paint wasn't thinned out. If it was too thick, I would have to mix a lot of paint, use a lot of. So I want this white to come through my colors. In my painting one class earlier in quarter 3, particularly in Fortis, yes, because I had painting one for Liguori back in the first semester. In third quarter, we're mixing color wheels. And you'll notice once you start to get darker and lighter colors, if you thin out that paint a little bit while you're adding it down to your surface, you're going to let the white really shine through and create this luminous light and warmth that's going to come through the backside of your paint rather than just relying on the sheer color. And you can really do this very easily and well with oil paint because you have all kinds of mediums to mix in to it. So right now, I'm mixing in, I just grabbed a little bit of linseed oil, and you can see it's like almost like soupy. It's almost kind of soupy. I'm going to mix a lot of this color, and we're going to just jump right in. Grab a little bit more mineral spirits. I want to look at my photograph I'm working from to see where the horizon line is. And I'll probably mark that right now. It's probably going to be right about here. I don't even know if you can see that. Hold on. So we're going to start to lay in that color. Oh, that is a nice blue. That is a nice blue. Laying that in, working top down, right? Back to front, background to foreground. And so I'm going to get that nice, bright, rich color that I just mixed up towards the top of my landscape, top of my painting. Really making sure I cover all the corners. Isn't that a wonderful sound? I don't even know if you can hear that sound of my brush on the canvas. I love that sound. Okay. Really making sure we get the very top of my painting all nice and opaque, right? Not see-through, opaque. And then as we work our way down, and start to thin it out even a little bit more. Grabbing some straight mineral spirits and, oh yeah. Oh, that's going to be nice. That is going to be nice. So you can see as I work my way down here, you can see that gradual. There we go. You can see this nice gradual gradation of that blue that I just mixed using mineral spirits to thin it out. Now I don't want to get too drippy, as you can see when I did this kind of last time with my painting. I didn't have enough on my brush. If I put down too much mineral spirits, it's going to start to drip and move down my painting, and that's not really what I want for this painting, at least for right now. I like to use this effect when I'm painting water, so maybe we'll do that a little bit when we eventually get the next few live streams, when we get to painting the actual water, the riverbed or the lake. But for my sky, I want it to be this nice airy and pretty bold color to start with. So I'm going to gradually fill out my sky here. Now, normally, if I was working with acrylic paint, like most of my students do, especially in painting 1, we stick to acrylic because it's all water-based. But as we move into painting 2, we're actually just about to start a landscape project with oil paint. And the nice thing is, this is going to stay wet for probably a full day from now. Now, I have mixed in some mediums like mineral spirits and linseed oil, so things will dry a little quicker than if it was just paint, just the straight oil paint. But what is really nice is that over this period of time that I'm painting and talking to you, I can change things, wipe things away if I need to. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we start sketching with paint to get the rest of the landscape in here. But that is starting to look nice. So keeping it nice and loose. Get some more mineral spirits, nice and thin. Looking pretty good. Mixing that some more linseed oil and mineral spirits into that blue to really thin it out so I can cover some more ground here. And what that mineral spirits also does, even without the drips, it still creates this nice airy texture, which then I can use for some of the clouds that I'm going to add in eventually, right? Especially while it's still wet, I can start to lay in some shapes for some airy clouds and to really create that atmosphere. Hey, we got 8 people tuning in. Welcome, welcome. Again, just a reminder, there is a chat section this time. If you have any questions while I'm going, please feel free to say, hey, ask a question, ask away. So I'm really building up this sky, and that's really all I want to do for my sky. Now, like I said, I do want to go back in and add just a little bit of cobalt blue at the top because we want to help get that nice rich color from my atmosphere to come down. So what I'm going to do, start to mix in that darker blue. I'm going to start to mix in that darker blue. Oh, yeah, that's looking nice. I'm going to kind of work it back and forth, really blend it in. And it's going to be really subtle, probably hard for you to see. But that nice dark cobalt blue, especially towards my corners, right, kind of create that vignette. I don't even know the correct term, right? But if we do some darker and more bold things in my corners, kind of keeps your eye contained in the canvas, right? We want to like kind of focus your eye over the entirety of my scene rather than have my eye focus on something and whoop, go right off the page or right off the canvas. So we're taking that cobalt blue and we're going to mix it right in at the top of my skyline. Oh, that's looking nice. That's looking good, folks. And again, what I can't obviously, I can't even speak today. I can't obviously expect you all to be painting along at home. But if you have the means to paint along at home, even if it's with acrylics or if it's with color, even if you want to draw with colored pencils, maybe paint with some watercolors, please feel free and to join along with me. And if I know that you're doing that, some of my students or whoever's watching, right? Write in the chat and I can give you some tips about what to use for those specific materials as well. So I'm going to go back over here to that mixed blue I made. Kind of want to add a little bit more of that color in here. Mix it into that cobalt blue, get a nice bold color. We're almost done with my sky for right now. I know it doesn't quite look finished, but we're going to move on to the rest of my underpainting. Just a second. Oh, oops, sorry about that. Looks like I got a message from somebody else. Nice. So it looks like some of my friends are tuning in as well. Thank you, Luke. You say you really like that cobalt blue. I do too. It's looking great. Sean, you said it's really a nice deep color. Sean, I hope you're painting along with me. I know you talked to me like maybe a week ago, said you wanted to do a little virtual video chat painting session together. So I really hope you're taking this opportunity to do that, although I know that you also have to work from home. So if you're able to, oh, that's nice. Because, okay, let's see if we can circle. If you can see here, I got this nice patch of that. This is what I'm talking about, where the white of my canvas is really coming through that thinner color. And it's helping, one, create some cloud forms, but two, also really get that nice airy atmospheric quality. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start to sketch in and block in some of the color for my main landscape down here. So in order to do that, I got to show you the picture I'm working from. Let me clean off some of my brushes. Always very important to clean your brushes between colors unless you want some of those colors to seep into each other, which I'll talk a little bit about up here towards that skyline. But give me one moment. Got to pull something up. All right, so we've got the photograph I'm working from here off my iPad. So what we just did was create this this blue sky section, right? You know what? Actually, while we still have that blue, you can see some of that. It is a little bit different down in the water, but we're going to go ahead and map out that water section, and then we're going to jump into some of these red colors to really sketch out the rest of my painting. So my apologies. Working on the fly here. So we're going to actually jump back, get some of that cobalt blue, mix that into my color here, because it looks like my water is a little bit more of purpley, iridescent kind of smoothness I'm looking at here. Yeah. So also, if you noticed the shape, the general size and shape of the photograph I was working from, there's like a general aspect ratio when you take photos. And this is actually a little bit longer. I like to paint a little bit more panoramic, longer views. If it was normal to the photo, it'd probably cut off right about here, right? And then just be this section here. But so I kind of have to adapt and kind of compose on the fly. So water is going to come up to about here and it comes down to about here. So I'm going to lay in some of that cobalt blue mixed with the mixed blue that I made to begin with. And we're going to try to sculpt this shoreline here with some of my water. So it actually kind of swoops in like this. I need more paint on my brush. There we go. And I'm not being super particular about the water right now because I know that I'm going to create layers over top of that later on. This is, again, just that underpainting to get started. And then my trees come from about here and straight across. Again, not being super picky, not using a ruler to create straight lines, right? We want it to be nice and loose, nice and workable. Really laying down that blue color. Notice how much thinness or how transparent I'm creating the paint in my water here. I'm trying to let that light come in from my white canvas again. Get some more cobalt blue in that color. There we go. Really spreading it out, covering a lot of ground. And again, if I wanted to, I could probably use a bigger brush, but I like to kind of paint with a medium-sized brush when I'm doing this. That way you can start to really get some of that airy atmospheric brush work going on here. Really, really just taking my time, right? I mean, it's quarantine. It's COVID-19. We're hanging out. We're painting, taking our time, relaxing, enjoying the time of solitude, of painting, trying to imagine that we are exploring, getting out to these beautiful places we are painting to get that sense of serenity. You know, I didn't really talk about why I chose these photographs to paint from, but it is very much about the sense of stillness. Yeah. Sense of stillness and this. I had never been to Cape Cod before, and it was absolutely gorgeous. I hope if anybody gets the chance to go up there, please do. So again, mixing some linseed oil and some mineral spirits into my paint to thin it out a little bit so I can cover some more ground. I'm trying to finish up this section in here. I am very excited to get to painting water with you. I do love painting water, and we'll talk a little bit about that eventually when we do some abstract painting. A lot of my abstract paintings are derived from the surface of waters or liquids, and I'm really interested in the kinds of textures and the way that those fluids move back and forth. Hey, looking at the camera, it looks pretty good. That's always important when you're painting. You always want to, every now and again, and you know, it's been about 30 minutes I've been live here getting started with these blue tones. It's always important to kind of take a step back. And what actually the live stream allows me to do is it looks small on my screen. So it kind of does the same effect. So I can look at that and be like, oh yeah, that's nice. Got a little bit of a dark blue right here. So I'm going to work that out a little bit. Maybe add in some more mineral spirits and start to layer some of those colors. Now, talked about this before, right? I can start to use just the straight material into that wet paint. We can get some of these nice drips to create some nice dynamic water. So again, I'm using just mineral spirits. Oh, there we go. Can you see that? Can you see those drips? Get some nice texture in there. Hey, does anybody have any questions? It's really strange just like narrating while I'm painting. Normally I got headphones in, listening to some ambient music, hanging out. Got 7 people tuned in right now. I just had 8. I see you. I see you, whoever ran away. Well, thanks for tuning in to begin with. Yeah, maybe I can take some of this darker cobalt blue with some of that mineral spirits, right? Start to really create some of these nice drips in here. Oh yeah. Can you see over my shoulder, like if I do that? So I don't want it to be too bold, but it is nice every now and again, especially. So in my photograph here, let me set you back down. In my photograph, we've got the reflection of my trees in the water, right? And so you can use these drips like this along that shoreline on the opposite side of the lake to really kind of create and map out where those reflections are going to be. And that's a really nice trick. Don't honestly know where I picked that trick up, but I've used it a lot in my past work. So I'm actually going to go ahead and do some more of that right now. Get some of this cobalt blue come. And as that drips down, as that material is going to move down the canvas, it's going to create those shapes that are eventually I can then use to develop the silhouettes or the reflections of my tree line on the opposite side of the shore on my lake, which is really nice and convenient. Can mix in some linseed oil into that too. That way it's a little thicker. Again, the linseed oil is a thicker medium. It's a little too much. It's a thicker medium than my mineral spirits. You can start to let that fall. All right, that looked good. That's where my water is going to end for right now. So we are going to move into we're gonna move into sketching out some of the trees in the foreground and especially that tree line there. So what I like to use, especially because it was autumn time when I took this photograph, right? We have burnt sienna, and I know this tube of paint looks like it's like 90 years old, but still some beautiful paint. This nice, rich, reddish brown color in there. It's gonna be nice and wonderful. So I'm gonna go ahead and add some of that to my palette right next to my blue. And what's really nice, actually, when you mix blues and browns together, you get some really nice, rich, mixed blacks that you can actually use to outline some things. And we'll probably do that to add in some of the trees in the foreground eventually, not now, but eventually. And so I'm going to actually use the same brush I was just using. Again, taking some mineral spirits, and we're going to thin that out so I can actually use it kind of like it's ink, right? Kind of like it's ink. And we want to thin it out that way. So what's really nice about underpainting with oil paint is if you mess up, you can just wipe it away. You can just wipe it right off. All right, so we got that nice rich brown color. Okay, so let's take a look at our painting here. So we've got, what do I want to do here? We've got, I'm just going to cover this whole ground with this nice rich burnt sienna. I can see that behind all the foliage in my photograph is this underlying color of this burnt sienna. So I'm going to go ahead. Oh, and man, does that look electric next to that blue. There's so much orange in this brown here, and they're complementary colors. So when they are right next to each other, man, they just want to vibrate. It's like they're electric. You can actually see the color vibrate when it's right next to each other. I don't think you can see that through the camera, unfortunately, but whew, that is a nice color, man. Nice rich burnt sienna color. Again, I'm still letting my paint be nice and thin, right? Using mineral spirits to thin on my paint in order to get that light. We want that light, that luminosity from the white of my canvas to really show through. So I'm going to lay this down. Again, I know I'm not showing you my palette right now, but again, I'm just doing the same thing. I have that straight burnt sienna, thinning it out with those two mediums, and really just trying to lay down some wet paint, cover some serious ground. Right on. All right. Wow, have I really been painting already for 40 minutes? Man, time flies when you're having fun. When you're hanging out with all your virtual friends. Again, I'm not being too picky. As you can see, I'm keeping it really nice and loose with my brush strokes. We want to just block in a bunch of color first. And then as we build up those details gradually over the next few live stream sessions, right, we'll start to be more particular about the colors we mix and how we apply them to the canvas to add texture and detail and make sure that the light is appropriate and nice. Oh, that's looking good. That's looking good. Let's get some. All right. Because again, this is just my underpainting, right? Oil painting, especially landscape painting, is all about building up those layers and layers of paint through what's called glazes and scumbles. And we'll talk more about that when I actually get beyond the underpainting process. But this looks pretty good right now. There. All right, so now I'm going to jump to here, to my tree line. Now, I'm going to actually take some of the blue that I mixed before and mix that into this burnt sienna color right here. Now, the reason I'm going to do that, painting one, folks, we talked about this. Anybody remember? Oh, my mom's tuning in. Love that color. Thanks. It's a nice color. The reason we're going to mix that blue into that burnt sienna, that color you love, Mom, is we are going to push it back into space through color, right? There are a few different ways we can create what's called perspective in our paintings and create that wide open space. This is what's called atmospheric perspective, right? So this tree line, this foreground right here is right in front of me. My feet are standing on it. It's maybe like 10 feet in front of me. This is probably several hundred, if 500 feet away from me across this body of water. And so there's more air, there's more gaseous chemicals in the air that are between me, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, all those things in our air content. And what that does is it, one, mixes more blue into the painting, right, because of the water that's in the air. But two, it desaturates that color, right, because all the colors from my trees have to then filter through all these really fine particles of water and other like chemicals in the air. And so it creates a haziness and it desaturates that color. So what I'm going to do is start to mix these two together to really desaturate my burnt sienna color. So this is why I put them both right next to each other. That way it'd be much easier. And you can see that this brown is much lighter. It's much less intense. Because again, we just want to create that nice background underpainting color in order to sketch out my landscape. So we're going to start to put this in here. I'm going to go ahead and, oh, that's nice. That nice greenish gray blue, the warmth of the, you can't even see, sorry, it's on my palette. Look at that. That is nice. We have the warmth and the yellow of my brown mixing with the blue of my sky, which creates green. Very good, everybody. So we're going to create these green tones, which it doesn't even look green on my palette. Like I said, right? You always want to hold it up before we get there. I always want to hold it up to your painting to make sure that color is the correct color. But man, that is spot on. And I can always mix in a little bit more blue or mix in a little bit more of that burnt sienna to kind of push and pull that color. So the top of my skyline or my tree line here, instead of going side to side, I'm actually going to do some vertical strokes, right? Because we have some tree trunks and the tips of my trees are going to stick out. And so I can start to push and pull that with the wet paint that's it's already there. As you can see, I start to create those two different layers. I got some trees that are in the front, maybe some taller trees in the back, all using just this one color and the thin or thickness of it to kind of create those treetops. So I'm going to grab some more of this color here. Maybe I wanted a little bit more burnt sienna. Oh yeah, I get some of that warmth in there, right? Cover some more warm brown here. And then I'm going to pull up that cooler color I had mixed before with the blue. I'm going to pull that up into my paint. Oh, that's starting to look really nice. Again, we're going to kind of use these vertical brush strokes to push and pull. Hey, I'm sorry if I stumble every now and again. Really, it's pretty strange trying to talk and paint at the same time. I'm not used to it. So I'm still warming up. I'm a rookie at this whole live stream thing, so bear with me. Again, I'm trying to mix some of that blue. Remember, this is still wet. All this sky up here, this is still wet, so I can really push and pull and mix it with this color that I have for my trees here to kind of get this nice fuzzy skyline, which might be kind of hard for you to see from where I have the camera. Yeah, look at that, right? already creating a really nice sense of depth in my trees before we're even really adding any details, any sense of light. So just mixing, getting some more of this color here. Again, mixing burnt sienna with cerulean blue and that mixed blue we mixed from the get-go. So I'm going to take some. Let's get some more. Let's get this nice and wet so we can really start to push and pool some of my colors. I'm laying down really thin glazes with some linseed oil and some mineral spirits to really get my canvas nice and wet. That way when I come up here, start to push and pull with that blue to get my skyline. Sorry, I keep saying skyline, my tree line, the tops of my tree line, right? It's really gonna mix and create that nice atmospheric color right up here towards the top. Oh, how's everybody doing? It's a beautiful day out. I hope everyone, I messaged most of my students today saying it was going to be beautiful out and that you should get outside, go for a walk, or better yet, go for a bike ride, go down by one of the beautiful rivers we have, take a look at the water, come back to your little studio, paint away, right? Get some inspiration from the real world out there. I know it's weird times again. I hope everyone's happy, healthy, safe. If you need anything at all, please let me know, or somebody else from the school, Miss Shannon, Mr. Pat, Mr. Nick, whoever you need to talk to, Miss Rebecca, Mr. Phipps. We are all here for you. Big shout out to the rest of my staff because they're working incredibly hard to make sure that everything is in place for all of you at home. Because again, this is just as new to us as it is to you. But honestly, painting for my home studio and live stream to y'all is pretty fun, so I'm okay with it. I'm going to paint for about the next 13 minutes. We'll cap it at an hour, just like last time. Seems like an hour is a good amount of time to really get started. As all of my students know, 45 minutes in a painting classroom is just not enough. Not enough time to really dive into a painting. So luckily, you can cap it at an hour and really start to make some progress and some headway. Again, using some of this color here. It's looking good. Again, I'm not being too picky about the trees. Notice that I haven't even looked at the photograph I'm working from for a while, right? This is just a launching point. I feel like a lot of students get really tied up in the idea that when they're drawing from a photograph or they're drawing something from real life, that it needs to be pinpoint realistic. And it's more about being inspired by the things you find in the real world and developing and experimenting with materials as you work on it and go through it, right? To really create something that is your own, something that doesn't exist in a photograph, right? Lots of conversations in painting or in the art world talk about painting. Is painting dead? No, it's not, because you're creating this whole world, this whole brand new world that maybe is inspired and you're pulling from the real world, but it's your own world in and of itself. And you can make any decisions. If I wanted to, put a giant airplane flying through here, maybe I will. Who knows? I probably won't for this one, just because it's all about stillness. But if I wanted to, I could, and that's the whole point of painting. So as you can see, I'm starting to mix in some darker colors down here where it's on the shoreline where it touches the lake, right? And I think that's good for my tree line right now. But before I move on and we wrap up everything, I do want to approach this reflection in the water. Now, the reason is because it's still wet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thin down my paint more than I have thus far, right? Using some linseed oil over here. I'm using some mineral spirits. And I'm going to do that same thing I did before where I dripped the pigment with the mineral spirits to create that. Let's see if I can. See if you can see that. Oh yeah, right here. Look at that. So if I get just enough of the thinness of my paint, it's going to drip just the way I want it to. As I move across the surface, it gets a little bit more of some linseed oil, because linseed oil drips down the canvas in a much different way. It's really nice in combination with the mineral spirits. So maybe get some more here at the end. Whoop. Went a little too far down. A little too drippy. Playing with drips is sometimes can be very tricky because you don't want it to overtake the painting. You don't want it to be too much. You don't want those drips to travel too far and look unrealistic, because remember, we're trying to create the mirrored reflection of my tree line in my lake, in my water. So you want to just work slowly and carefully, making sure the consistency of your paint is just where you want it, so it's going to drip just the way you want it. And obviously there are lots of factors that tie in. I gotta set this down. Hold on. There are lots of factors that tie in. So before I get to that point, you can see over here, my drips went too far. So what's really nice about oil paint is that, of course, it's still wet. None of it's dried yet. So I come in here and just wipe it off. This whole area down here, this foreground, is still wet. Just wipe it away. Right? Fix it up. Maybe you wipe away some of that brown of drips that I've already started, and then look at that. Look at that nice subtle reflection. Not quite done yet, but we're almost there. I want it to be just a little bit taller. The way I'm going to do that is by putting down the pigment first and then gradually adding some more mineral spirits and linseed oil. And that is going to allow those drips to go down just a little bit further. It looks like this one over here went a little, actually that might look, I can kind of measure, right? Looks like it might be a little too long. That's okay, because we're going to come in these areas right here. Add some more drips. It's going to create that really nice reflection. So it's really about pushing and pulling the material, figuring out what works for you best. Like that drip's obviously way too much, right? So I'm going to go back in while that's still wet, right? While it's still wet, I'm going to go in with my rag and wipe it out and get it to where I need it and want it to be. It's all still wet. It's all very workable. And I can just, look at that. It's pretty much gone. Pretty much gone. And remember, I still have that blue color. So if I want, I can go ahead, take some of that blue color and paint over it a little bit and get rid of it. Beautiful. Get some more of that cobalt blue. There it is. There it is. Beautiful. Kind of maybe put back over here, push back some of those drips, especially over here where I went a little too far. It's looking really nice so far. All right. So does anybody have any questions? Now would be the time. I'm going to start to wrap up. Unfortunately, we didn't get to my other two landscape paintings, but next time we'll jump back into this. Hopefully I'll have some more things sketched out for you in the underpainting here. We'll take a look at the other Cape Cod painting over here, one next to it, right? Some different colors going on. Maybe we'll add some burnt sienna into that because I feel like that'll be much better. And then we'll add some painting and some details towards the ending of this painting. So thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate everyone who takes the time. I know it's difficult out there, especially learning remotely. It's very difficult, especially for the arts. But hopefully you've enjoyed this, right? Me getting a little bit of my Bob Ross on. And so next time I want to work on this painting again, but then maybe in the future we'll work on some more abstract paintings, some more thick and different experimental materials. And then maybe we'll do some drawing lessons for some figure drawing. I know that in my previous drawing one classes, we do self-portraits, so we already know how to draw the face. So I want to get into a little bit more about the body proportions and yeah. Very cool. So if you have any questions, let me know. Shoot me an email, cbluet@lagoriaacademy.org. Thank you again for everybody. Be safe, stay home, social distancing. I hope you're all healthy. Take care.